Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a slightly belated Timey-Wimey Tuesday. Originally, when I was sort of figuring out what kind of topics I wanted to cover last week, the original plan was to just kind of do some kind of general overview of the various classic era Doctor Who comics that I had enjoyed in my youth and continue to enjoy and revisit to this day. And as I was kind of gathering together my materials for that episode, it occurred to me that there's one story in particular which is quite worthy of note. So I thought, rather than just kind of doing a general overview, why don't I do it more kind of focused on individual stories that had a big impact on the Doctor Who comics at the time. So there's a there's a couple in particular that I want to cover. But this time, we'll be talking about a classic tale featuring the Fourth Doctor. Originally debuted in the premiere issue of Doctor Who Weekly way back in 1979. Written by 2000 AD alumni Pat Mills and drawn by Dave Gibbons, who some of you may know from Watchmen. I'm of course talking about Doctor Who, The Iron Legion. And that's what we're going to talk about today on Timey-Wimey Tuesday on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So, some of you may be wondering, well, yeah, I think I've seen that Iron Legion story kicking around before. What's the big deal about it? What's so special about it? Well, it is the story that changed everything for Doctor Who comics. All the Doctor Who comics prior to Doctor Who Weekly coming along appeared primarily in youth magazines and effectively the UK equivalent of the Sunday Funnies. Things like TV Comic and TV Century and Century 21. Now, there were good and bad eras for those comics back then. In particular, the Third Doctor strips were apparently quite good. I have read a few of them and can concur they are quite good. But they had a very different kind of look and feel to them. And they really felt more like newspaper strips rather than as proper comic books. Now, when Doctor Who Weekly came along in 1979, the whole idea behind the magazine was to appeal to a broader audience rather than just targeting specifically at the youth. They wanted to focus on a slightly older audience, slightly more mature audience, but it's at the same time maintaining that appeal for the younger viewers. The original editor of Doctor Who Weekly magazine said his sort of mantra for it was, don't make it just for the fans. You know, he wanted to make it for everybody. The idea being that the fans are going to buy it anyway. We don't have to appeal to them, so let's give it a broader appeal. And then there's a little something for everybody in there. So one of the things that he really wanted to do was have a comic strip, like a regular serialized comic strip, as one of the main features of the magazine. So, but he didn't want it to be like the old comics, like the ones that had been around since the 60s and carrying on till the mid to late 70s. So instead, he approached, as I mentioned in the intro there, he approached some of the top writers and artists from other top UK comics, such as 2000 AD. And, because that type of stuff, like the Judge Dredd and all those, were really appealing to the young adult, like the teen to young adult audience and such. And he kind of wanted to bring some of that flavor to the Doctor Who strips. So he got Pat Mills and Dave Gibbons, two creators who had done quite a lot of work, had worked together actually on 2000 AD over the years, and were already quite well-established names in the UK comics scene. So it was something of a coup, apparently, to be able to get them to do the comics. So it was pretty cool indeed. So with the debut issue of Doctor Who Weekly, I grabbed some cover scans for you. We got issue number 1, which featured the very first part of the 8-part serial, The Iron Legion. Now, The Iron Legion was basically a story on an epic scale that could never have been done on the show at the time. And that was one of the cool things about the comics from that era, was I mean, on a comic book page, the only limit is your imagination and what the artist is capable of drawing, you know? So what we often got in those comics were not necessarily huge epic stories. Like, I'm not talking about epic stories in terms of, you know, cast of thousands. No, they were still fairly small scale stories in terms of the number of characters and whatnot. But the scale of the settings of them was often far and away more massive than anything, and elaborate than anything you could have ever seen on the TV show at the time. In fact, it wasn't until I've always felt it wasn't really until the 7th Doctor's era where we started to get the same kind of vibe from the show that we'd been getting from the comics for almost 10 years prior to that. And what I mean by that is, in the comics, you really felt that the world that the universe rather, that the Doctor inhabited was a very large place, and there was a lot of there was a living, breathing universe with just stuff going on all over the place all the time. And you got senses of that here and there in the classic series. It wasn't really until, I think, the modern series that they've really dove into that, with the, you know, interconnected stories and interconnected continuities, and you get different monsters teaming up with different monsters and stuff. That's something you really didn't see very much of in the classic series. So you get a lot more of the interaction of the denizens of the Doctor Who universe in the new series than you did in the old. Well, in the classic series era, we already got that in the form of the comics, and yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. Now, my introduction to the Doctor Who, the UK Doctor Who comics, was when Marvel actually reprinted them. Marvel US actually reprinted a whole bunch of them over here. They started with the very first story, The Iron Legion, from Doctor Who Weekly, and I'll show you. Actually, I still have my original issues here. We have this, which is Marvel Premiere, issue number 57. I actually have 2 copies of it just because. First American comic book appearance of the Doctor. How can you go wrong? Actually, technically speaking, I have 3 copies of this. One of them I gave to Rosie as a reading copy, so she got the the lesser condition one just to have as a reading copy. And then give you a nice high-res scan here. There you go. This is actually taken off one of my covers here. I just threw it on the scanner. I figured, why not? Might as well. I got the scanner. I might as well use it. Give you the best quality cover pics that I can. And then, of course, we have the latter half of the story in here. Now, the original presentation in Doctor Who Weekly, each part was only 4 or 5 pages long. So collectively, the whole story is about 34 pages. I mean, it's really not a long story by any stretch. Essentially, stretched out over those 8 weeks, you have the equivalent of 1 full comic book. But what it meant was, I mean, the writers and artists had tons of time. I mean, they only had to turn in about 16 or 17 pages a month, which is like half a comic, so they could really give it their all and do a quality job of it. I should mention also a couple of prizes from my collection here, and I did nice scans of these as well. The earliest issue of Doctor Who Weekly that I have, issue number 4, which has part 4 of the Iron Legion in it. Here, I'll show you. You can see with Doctor Who Weekly here, and then they just have the clean image on the back. So Doctor Who Weekly, they really wanted to feature the comics. So it was page 1, man. Like, you open it up and there's the comics right there, just starting right off the bat. So I've got issue number 4, and I also have issue number 6 of Doctor Who Weekly. So, and this has part 6 of the Iron Legion in it. Now, one of my goals as a collector is to get all 43 issues of Doctor Who Weekly, because I I've always felt that this is kind of a milestone in terms of the printed material available and sort of behind the scenes material available for the show. And then I'd also like to get, at least, I don't know, the first 300 or so issues of Doctor Who Monthly. Doctor Who Monthly, later retitled the Doctor Who Magazine. I have a bunch of issues of it. If you go on my Facebook page, I put up cover pics, not nice high-quality scans, because I think my scanner was busted at the time. It wasn't until recently I got a new one. But I did do just some, cover pictures and description of what was in some of them. So you can check that out on the Facebook page. So, as you may have seen in the Doctor Who Weekly comics, originally the comic strips were presented in black and white. Now, when they were reprinted in Doctor Who, in the Marvel Premiere presentation, this was the first time they'd ever appeared in color. And then, quite a few years later, IDW picked up the rights to publish them and did a whole new version with a whole new coloring process used to bring them to life like never before. And I should mention in between there was also this, the 1985 Summer Special Classic, which basically took the Marvel Premiere version and reprinted it on magazine-size paper, much closer to the size of pages that the original magazine version was, and retouched the color yet again. So I guess in chronological order, first you have Doctor Who Weekly, which had them serialized as black and white episodes, and then you actually had the. Well, let's take a look here. We'll take a look at the whole works, shall we? So we had Doctor Who Weekly, which presented them in 8 parts. So the Iron Legion presented as 8 serialized parts. And then you had... This is going to take a little while. While we're going through the Doctor Who Weekly covers, I'll give you a brief summary of the plot here. So basically, it takes place in the far-flung future, where the Doctor discovers a civilization where, kind of an alternate Earth, I guess, or Earth-like civilization, where the Roman Empire never fell. It actually just kept growing and growing, and eventually expanded to the point where they went out to conquer the universe. So where the Doctor comes in, this galactic Roman Empire is at the height of its power, but he suspects that there may be some kind of evil alien intelligence controlling things behind the scenes, and that's where our story begins. But there's some great moments in there. I mean, Pat Mills, I think, really captured the essence of Tom Baker's Doctor. Dave Gibbons' artwork is absolutely phenomenal. We'll take a look at a few pages here in just a moment. But just a really fun story, and just a really fun group of supporting characters in it as well. Again, the likes of which you would likely never see in the show, just because the logistics of bringing these characters to life on the TV show budget just would have been impossible. For example, you have the character of Morris, who is essentially a galley slave. They have like galley slave, spaceships with galleys, and or not really spaceships, but airships with galleys, and instead of rowing, they have the slave galley, and they're turning these cranks to turn the propellers on the ships to keep them afloat. And the Doctor meets up with this guy named Morris, who is horribly disfigured, and he has like parts of his face and arm are cybernetic, because he keeps trying to escape and keeps injuring himself. So the doctors just keep patching him up with various robotic parts. So now he's nobody wants to talk to him, nobody wants to have anything to do with him because he's so hideous. But the Doctor has no problem with him. He's thinks he's quite handsome compared to some of the creatures that he's seen recently. But I should mention also, there's a wonderful scene in it where the Doctor is basically, you have the obligatory gladiatorial game, like combat games scene, which our heroes always get thrown into in any kind of Roman Empire story. Well, no exception here. The Doctor gets thrown in and has to fight, except in this case, it's alien creatures that he has to fight. Yeah, long before Star Wars Episode 2, Doctor Who did it in the Iron Legion. Okay, so, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, because you really need to read this story for yourself and just enjoy it. But the way the Doctor gets out of that situation and survives is such a the Doctor way to do it. And it's absolutely hilarious and just wonderful. And totally something like you would expect Tom Baker's Doctor to do. So yeah, that scene's a lot of fun. There's also this sort of cantankerous, rusty old robot called Vesuvius. He has like a flame coming out of his head, and this robot character is just just a delightful kind of comic relief character, and but that type of character would never have been possible on the show. I mean, it would have looked like a garbage can with legs. But the character as portrayed in the comic is wonderful and just a lot of fun. And then you got the one of the main villains. What the heck was his name? I just reread it the other day too. I'm blanking on the names here. Hold on a second. You got the just gotta find his name here. General Ironicus. That's who it was. I'll just show you here. We got General Ironicus, who is basically this robotic warrior guy whose head is supposed to be modeled after the eagle of Rome. And the Doctor keeps calling him Parrot Head and Parrot Face and such just to egg him on. And again, a character that might have looked okay in the show, but is rendered really, really well in the comic, and very menacing, and just a great character design. So, I mean, needless to say, as far as being the debut of the new and improved Doctor Who comics, the Iron Legion just came out of the gates with all guns blazing. I mean, just hitting the ground full speed, and has not let up since. I mean, the Doctor Who strip that's going today in Doctor Who magazine, its origins go right back to the Iron Legion. That's ground zero for where the modern Doctor Who comics that we know today started. That was it. Iron Legion's the beginning of it, right there. So, if you want to see the creme de la creme of Doctor Who comics, start with the Iron Legion and work your way through. Because the Doctor Who magazine strips, they have had their dips in quality over the years. I understand their 7th Doctor era kind of suffered from some bad decisions along the way. But then it picked up again with the 8th Doctor and has carried on pretty strong ever since. But, yeah, overall, pretty solid run. But anyway, I was going to show you some more, so I keep getting sidetracked. Anyway, Iron Legion, the story is a lot of fun and an epic scale story, just in terms of the environment that it's set in, that you would never have seen in the show. And you'll see that pretty much immediately. In fact, why don't we take a look at the various pages right now, shall we? So this is the very first page of part 1 of the Iron Legion, from Doctor Who Weekly number 1. And as you can see, it's in glorious black and white. So then, fast forward a few years, we have the Doctor Who, the Marvel Premiere, issue number 57, the first time the story had been presented in color. So there you go. So there's the first page in color, and I even left the indicia in there if you're curious. I don't even know if even on the high-res scan there, I don't even know if you can read that. But anyway, just to give you a sense of the color. Then, when they did the 1985 Summer Special Classic, and they did this one here, they punched up the color yet again, and here's what the first page looks like in that. Ah, that's a little better, eh? Yeah, that's a lot brighter, a lot sharper, a lot crisper. Part of that being the quality of the paper that they used in this graphic novel format reprint is much higher quality than the sort of cheap newsprint that they would use for the just the regular comics at the time. So I'm sure that the color as it appears in that issue now probably didn't look quite that bad when it first came out. I'm sure that it's faded with age. I mean, it's pushing 30 plus years old. But yeah, so anyway. Then finally we have the IDW Doctor Who Classics version, in which they completely redid the color from the ground up and added a lot more shading effects and stuff like that. And there you go. There it is. So, pretty nice. If we do just kind of a quick skim here, I also grabbed page 3 for you, just because page 3 gives us a bit of a look at the Doctor. One of the he came into the story on page 2, I believe. So this is only the second page of Tom Baker's Doctor in comic book form. He was in strips before that, but the first appearance of the new and improved Tom Baker comic book Doctor. So here's page 3 as it appeared in issue 1 of Doctor Who Weekly in black and white. I have to find a slightly better scan of this one. And then here's the Marvel Premiere version of the same page. Then here's the 1985 Summer Special Classic reprint edition. And then finally, here's the IDW Doctor Who Classics version. And there you go. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this story was because, as I started to touch on at the beginning there, as I was kind of sorting through my resources and my materials and doing a little bit of just background research and such, I realized the Iron Legion has probably been reprinted and made more available than any other Doctor Who comic book story in history. Like, there are so many editions of this. Okay, let's go through all of them right now, shall we? Here we go. So starting from the very beginning, we'll show, we'll just quickly go through these one more time here. So we got Doctor Who Weekly, issues 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and finally 8. So the 8 parts of the original story. Then we have Marvel Premiere, issue number 57, which has basically the first half of the story. And then we've got Marvel Premiere, issue number 58, which has the latter half of the story. And I should mention, it also contains a short story entitled K9's Finest Hour. Now, K9's Finest Hour originally appeared in Doctor Who Weekly, issue number 12. And here that is here. Here that is here, yes. And much like the rest of the stories, was reprinted in color for the first time in Marvel Premiere number 58. Then next up, we've got we actually have the 1980 Summer Special, which I believe was a black and white reprint of the original story. I'm pretty sure that Marvel Premiere was the first time it was ever in color. In fact, I know that for a fact. So the Summer Special was basically just reprinting the Iron Legion in complete form for the first time. So I guess this one actually predates the Marvel Premiere by about a year. And so then we have the Summer Special, then we have Marvel Premiere, then the Summer Special Classic. Then we also have the first issue of Doctor Who Classics right here. Very nice. And then we got the second issue of Doctor Who Classics. Then the IDW versions have been available in a few forms. Here's Volume 1 of Doctor Who Classics, which is a trade paperback, comic book format trade paperback, which reprinted the first few Doctor Who Classics issues. It included all of the Iron Legion and a couple more stories there. And then there's also, this is actually Rosie's. I just borrowed it from her for this video. We have the Doctor Who Classics Omnibus, which this book alone contains almost every single Tom Baker story from Doctor Who magazine. There is a Volume 2 of the Omnibus as well, which we'll look at in another episode. But, yeah, very nice. Very nice indeed. I love it. And, it doesn't stop there. There's also the Dave Gibbons collection, which again features the IDW recolored versions, but just the stories that Dave Gibbons did. So it's his entire Doctor Who run compiled together in one massive book. And it's available in hardcover with a white border. And it's also available as a softcover trade paperback with black border. And you can still find that on Amazon pretty cheap. I'll toss some links into the description, as I usually do with these Doctor Who videos. And then finally, if you're a purist and you want your Doctor Who magazine strips in as close to their original form as possible, maybe just a little cleaned up, we have Panini Books. Yes, Panini Books has been reprinting every single Doctor Who magazine comic strip ever for several years now. They've got something like 19 volumes of them out now, pretty much right up to the current strips, or as current as can be. The strips in the comic or in the magazine did eventually go to full color. I think it was the Seventh Doctor's era, about the first half of the Seventh Doctor's era, where they were still in black and white, and then eventually they switched to full color and have been ever since. Yeah, so pretty cool. But anyway, the Iron Legion here, much like the Doctor Who Omnibus, it contains about half of Tom Baker's stories. And you can still find this edition around. I'm pretty sure it's had a few printings and is fairly available. Sorry. I was going to say, then there's the Marvel Doctor Who comic, but no, that was the Marvel premiere. Yeah, the Marvel Doctor Who comic carried on where Marvel Premiere had left off. So Marvel Premiere, they did 4 issues of Doctor Who. They did 2 story arcs, specifically the Iron Legion and City of the Damned, which was another quite good one, I thought. A little bit of 1984 in there. Kind of cool, but maybe we'll talk about that another time. And then, and that was pretty much it. And then after that, they made Doctor Who a regular comic, and it ran almost to the end of the Peter Davison stories, and then it was canceled after 23 32-page issues. So I used to have a complete run of those. One of my goals, possibly for this year, is to get the complete run of those again, because, they were very influential on me as far as, being a part of my early comic book collecting days, and also my introduction to the world of Doctor Who comics. Not to mention, the comics themselves were really fun. They had new artwork for the covers, a lot of which was carried over to the IDW Classics, Doctor Who Classics comics, and then, of course, recolored. In a lot of ways, I actually prefer the old coloring over the new. I know the new coloring has, more shading and everything, and it's a lot more, the interior art, I find, brings out the detail quite nicely, and adds a lot of texture to the image. But I almost feel like in some ways they almost overdid it a little bit and put a little bit too much emphasis on the color and the shading and stuff. Whereas, you look at the original black and white artwork, and it's just so beautifully drawn. Dave Gibbons is such an amazing artist. I've always loved his work. The Doctor Who comics were my introduction to his work, actually. When Watchmen came out, my first thought was, oh, Dave Gibbons, a Doctor Who guy. He was always that Doctor Who guy to me, who did the Doctor Who comics. But so I don't know. I there's something about the old style artwork. Like, for example, if we just take another look here at the at, say, page 3, or no, actually, let's do page 1. We'll do page 1. Actually, no, we'll do page 3. Now, will I be ambitious enough in the editing to have them both flashing up and on? And yeah, probably. Anyway, page 3. Just the difference in color here. We'll go back and forth a couple times. So here's the version from the Summer Special Classic, which is basically the Marvel Premiere color, but it looks like they redid it slightly again, because I noticed a little bit more, natural flesh tones and stuff in this one. So this is the Summer Special Classic version. And then we have the IDW version. You see? In particular, look at the bottom left panel there where the old man gets shot. And just the difference in color there. Now, we'll go back to the Summer Special Classics again. Now, look at that. It's more, just sort of the solid color there, I find makes it more dramatic. You know what I mean? Like it gives that frame more impact. Like, this is a shocking thing, and it's just, awash with shock and horror. Whereas if you switch over to the IDW version, look at that same panel, it still maintains that to some extent, but I find it doesn't have the impact, without the like really vibrant red emphasizing the shock value of that. I don't know. I just feel it doesn't have as much impact. And throughout the IDW recolorings, I found that I felt that way about certain scenes. Maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia creeping in because I'm accustomed to the old color because it's what I grew up with. And in a lot of ways, I'm accustomed to the black and white because there's a lot of strips I've only ever read in black and white. So, I don't know. We'll see. But, yeah, so for me personally, I've always really enjoyed the Iron Legion. I've always thought it was, I mean, it's basically Doctor Who meets 2000 AD. It really is. So if you like 2000 AD, check out the Doctor Who comics from the 70s and 80s. I think you'll find a lot to like there, especially the ones done by Dave Gibbons. I mean, that was really a high point for the comics. And then a little later on, during the Sixth Doctor's era, we got John Ridgway and Steve Parkhouse doing their run throughout the Sixth Doctor's adventures, and boy, were those ever a treat. Holy moly, that was another high point for the series. But that is another tale for another time. So I just kind of wanted to give this as my, I guess you could say, my little tribute to the Iron Legion, and just the sheer impact and influence it has had on Doctor Who comics ever since. I mean, it really is. I don't see people talk about it very much and give it, I think, the credit that it deserves. Because not only is it just a cracking Doctor Who story and a lot of fun, there are parts of it, that I find myself laughing out loud. I mean, some of the humor in it is just spot on. That's Tom Baker in comic book form, and then just the scale of it is jaw dropping. And it's just a really, really terrific, fun story. So check it out. Lord knows there's enough reprints out there. You should be able to find at least one of them. Actually, you would think that these Marvel Premiere issues went for a small fortune, but surprisingly they don't. They're actually pretty widely available. Like if you pop onto eBay, you can usually find these for under $15, if not less. So, I don't know, hunt around. You might find a treat. But I definitely recommend, if you can find it, get this version. Because this has all of the content from the first two Marvel Premiere issues, and but way better color. I mean, it just looks really, really nice. It's beautiful. I love it so. Oh, and I should show you the back. The back cover. Here, we'll get a big look at it here. Yes. Aren't those some freaking awesome looking Dalek model kits? Like, holy crap, those look amazing. Who's that? Sivan's. Yeah, Sivan's model kits. I looked some of those up on eBay. I didn't see the Dalek one, but they did a Cyberman set as well, and it looked freaking amazing. Needless to say, stupidly expensive now. They didn't make very many of them. But, wow. Good job. Anyway, that is it from me to you for now. Hope you enjoyed this extra length episode to make up for the absence last week. Sorry, guys. Sorry, don't kill me. Yeah, so next time we may take a look at some more comics. There's some other stuff I want to take a look at as well, but I'm kind of in a classic comics mood. So as I say, one of my goals for the collection this year is to collect the classic comics in their various forms. And we'll see how that goes. I've already got a few orders in my Amazon baskets. I want to get the newer comics as well. So I don't know. Just comics. It's all about the comics, man. Alrighty. Quick thank you to my Patreon sponsors. Big thanks to Kimberly Harmon and Kyle Pellegrini, especially, because they are my two highest level sponsors. Thank you very much, Guy and Gal. Appreciate it very, very much. You're helping to make it all happen here, and that's awesome. And big thanks to everybody else as well. Please do consider becoming a Patreon sponsor so I can get more Doctor Who stuff to do videos about for you. There you go. There's your incentive. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now. So until next time, thanks for watching, and sayonara.